Sober, Stay Sober, episode 6. The episodes keep on building, the count keeps going up, and that's awesome. I love watching these numbers go up. Sobriety counts go up, subscriber counts go up, and the episodes of these Get Sobers and Stay Sobers go up. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name's Josh, living life alcohol free. We're here on a Wednesday. How you feeling today? Are you feeling good in your alcohol free life? Are you questioning alcohol? Are you looking to get sober? Are you sober, but you're still, just wanting to touch base and join this community? I'm so glad that you're here. So let's get into this. I had some comments about panic attacks, anxiety, and all those things that come along with it. Man, we made it through the holidays. If you made it through alcohol free, congratulations. That deserves a huge round of applause because, man, it's not easy to survive it sometimes. We just gotta, I don't like to put a lot of weight into my negative thinking about the holidays. I've been there, I've done that. I've been through the whole negative feeling and the drinking cycle. I lived through it for so many years. I got tired of it. I did not feel well, and I didn't want to live like that anymore. So I changed my ways. I got alcohol free, and things have been on the upward trajectory ever since. And that's what it took. It took getting alcohol free to find that. It took being alcohol free 100% for some time to really start to recognize that it was the alcohol that was causing me a lot of my problems, especially my fear and my anxiety. I'm in the process of making a video about panic attacks in particular, but that can be revolve around anxiety, depression, and all of that. And I know that there's an appetite for that. It's been a while since I made a video like that, so I really wanted to get on there and make a video about that. If you haven't checked out my video this morning yet, I encourage you to go ahead and check that out. It's about binge drinking and how we set ourselves up for a binge session, and it's exciting when we think about getting into that binge session, but then we get into it. The longer we go into that session, yeah, it went from fun to all of a sudden now we're blacking out, we're making an ass out of ourselves, and then we end up regretting it, and we wake up with a hangover. Sometimes it's a terrible hangover, debilitating, and we just don't end up doing well. And then our anxiety sets in, our panic sets in, and if you're suffering with panic attacks and you're still drinking, 10 to 1, the alcohol is causing that panic and those anxiety attacks. I didn't really want to give that any weight when I was drinking all those years ago. I've been alcohol free going on 6 years now. But in my 20s, when I was starting to suffer with these panic attacks, it was for real. I was calling EMS, I was going to ER, I was trying to figure out what the real cause of these panic attacks were. And all in the meantime, still drinking a lot, drinking through all the pain and the anxiety, and then waking up the next day with this hangover and this black cloud over me. And I would get to the afternoon, and I would start to have these panic attacks. They'd set in. I could feel them coming on. I could feel my anxiety ramping up, and I didn't know why. The best I could get was basically my doctor would prescribe me some antidepressants and send me on my way. And I went through that a couple times. I'd take a day or two of pills, and I would say, nope, not for me. So I'd head right back to drinking. And drinking was my drug of choice. I didn't want to try anything else. It was tried and true. It was something that worked for me. It was something that I could count on and rely on as my coping mechanism. And so I would fall back into that. No matter what I was going through, alcohol was my solution. So if that's how you're feeling about your alcohol use, and you're using alcohol as a way to cope, as a way to handle your anxiety and depression, uh, we have that in common. I mean, that's kind of how I used it. Now, um, I was aware that the alcohol was causing me the anxiety and the panic attacks, and but it still didn't matter because the positive things that alcohol provided for me outweighed the negative, and that's just how it was. So I fought through those anxiety attacks the best I could. I ended up, I had some pretty bad indigestion issues in my later 20s, and I would drink through that. It lasted about 6 months to the point where I couldn't hold food down. And I felt like I was drinking myself to death. I was losing weight rapidly. I think I took off about 20 pounds in about a month. And I got to a point where, my belt size was going down. I was pulling that belt all the way to that last loop. And man, I was like, my boss was like, "Man, you've lost a lot of weight." And I said, "Man, I don't know what's going on exactly, but I can't eat, and I don't have an appetite. I can't eat." So I was doing this apple cider vinegar, and I would drink like an ounce of that every single day, because the testing that I was going through, they weren't finding anything really wrong. I went through a litany of testing. They couldn't find anything. I told them I've been doing apple cider vinegar. It seems to be helping. So I stuck with that routine for a good month or two. I felt like it was getting better. It started to get better. All in the meantime, drinking through it all, and of course that was making my anxiety worse because I felt like I was dying. I honestly felt like that's what was happening to me. I was drinking myself to death. So I got through that though. By the grace of God, I got through that. There was really no rhyme or reason why it was happening. I'm sure the alcohol was making it all worse, but the panic attacks still lingered, and that lingered on for years into my 30s. Um, I found my wife in my early to mid 30s. I was 33, and once I found my wife, we got engaged, and I started to feel like I was a little bit more solidified in my life. I had a good job. I was on the horizon getting married, and things seemed to be on the upward trajectory at that time. The panic attacks weren't as bad. I was in therapy. I was talking out my issues. I was paying down my debt. I was um, trying to get prepared to be married. Honestly, that's really what it was. And that whole year and a half leading up to the wedding was euphoric. I mean, my wife and I would drink together. We have a good time together with alcohol. And but as soon as we got married and reality set in, that anxiety and that depression started to kick back in, and it reared its ugly head. And I thought, how can you go from this euphoric state to just this back to this despair that you had? And I think it was just the fact that reality was setting in. It was like, this is it. This is my life now, and I've got to be able to figure out a way to make it work. I need to be okay with how things are going. Now, I was blessed enough to know in my heart that I found the right person. That was huge. That was a huge benefit. I knew in my heart that I had been through the gamut of dating, and I went through so many dates that I knew that, and some long term, some more long term, some short term, some you know one and done. But but as soon as I got married, and I recognized that I had the right person in my life, that I had to keep that in the forefront, and that helped my anxiety level to know that I chose wisely. I waited wisely, and I didn't always give myself credit. I didn't give myself credit for the good things that I did and the good choices that I made in my life all those years drinking. I felt like I beat myself up a lot. If things didn't work out for me, I felt like I deserved it. And why do I talk about all this? Well, the timing. It's the right time to talk about these things. When we're in the midst of all these issues, especially while we're in the midst of addiction, it's not time to talk about it. And I saw a meme the other day on Facebook, and it was like, when is the best time to talk about your life? And it said never. And I couldn't disagree with that more. I mean, but there's a time and a place for that, and that's kind of what some of the comments said. There's a time and a place for talking about what we're going through personally. Now, I'm on this platform talking about what I'm going through and what I went through publicly, but that didn't come in the first year of sobriety, not even the second year. It took like 3.5 to 4 years to get to a point where I was ready to talk about what I went through with alcohol. And so that's what this is. This is me talking about what I went through, my experiences with panic attacks, anxiety, depression, alcoholism, and all the things that went along with all those things, and how I was able to climb my way out. I slid down that bottle. It took many years to slide down that bottle. This Naked Mind uses a pitcher plant as an analogy for addiction, and it's, some people can drink alcohol, like they can float around the top of that pitcher plant, drink the nectar, enjoy it, but not fall down into it. But some people can drink it and love it too much and start sliding down that pitcher plant, but can kind of manage and kind of hang on, but they're like right in that, mid to top level of that pitcher plant. And then there's some people, like where I was with my drinking, that just slid all the way down and was drowning in it, in that nectar, alcohol. And I had certain levels of my drinking life. I mean, typically, and I talk about this a lot in my live streams and my videos, where when I was not working, when I was unemployed, and it's not been a lot of times, but when I was unemployed, that's typically when my drinking would get out of hand. Um, Good morning, Oliver. Welcome in. I'm in Michigan. And where are you at? And good morning, Destructo. Glad that you're here. Um, it sounds like you're in a bad spot, and that's the fact that you're here and you're posting on here and commenting and letting us know where you're at with it is a bold move. It's a move that's a necessary move. Not easy. Um, like I said, I was in a spot where I was in despair. I didn't know why I was even here. I didn't know the purpose. I didn't know my purpose. And my purpose was to wake up and drink. I mean, even with a family, even with a job, even with all these things going on, I felt like my reason for living was just to get up and plan up on binge drinking and then dealing with that hangover. But I as I got older, I got better at drinking. I could drink to a point where I had that perfect buzz, but then I'd get blackout drunk. But I would get to a point where I could manage, and I could drink as much as I possibly could without not functioning the next day. And then I would be able to get to a point where I could drink the next day, maybe not feeling like great about it, but I could still power through those first couple drinks. And then once I powered through those first couple drinks, it was on. And then just do it all over again. And then maybe not drink as much, but that third day be able to still drink more. And it was just, it got to an endless cycle where I was drinking earlier in the day, I was drinking all day and then into the night, and then um, adding on hard liquor at the end of a 5 or 6 day binge session, and just being sick and having this anxiety through the roof. And even though I was on medication at the time, it was still huge in my life. The anxiety, the panic, the anger, the anxiety, all of it. And what happened was I I started questioning alcohol. I got to a point where I started questioning it. And once I did that, I started to read about my addiction. Like I started to read about like why I drink like I do. I found a couple books, like I said earlier, This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and then I followed that up with Alcohol Explained by William Porter. And the Alcohol Explained by William Porter really solidified in my mind the science behind my addiction, why I drink, why we drink, why we become addicted, what goes on in our brain chemistry that once we cross over and we're in addiction now, why we can't stop. Even though we don't like it, we don't like who we are while we're drinking, we still can't stop. And, that really broke it down. Now, for me, the reason, the reasons varied. I mean, the first and foremost was once I was alcohol free for a couple weeks, I was able to acknowledge the fact that I was addicted to alcohol. It wasn't a habit like I always thought it was. It wasn't no big deal. It was a big deal, and I was hooked on it. And I was hooked on it for lots of different reasons. The ritual of it being one. I wasn't like physically dependent on alcohol, thankfully. Mine was more of like a mental thing, but I leaned on it and I used it as my coping mechanism. So, but once I read those couple books, I got into therapy with a therapist that specialized in drug and alcohol addiction counseling. Was an addict himself. All those things together helped me recognize that, you know what, I need to give alcohol free time a chance, not just a week or two, but get through that week or two and then see how I feel, recognize how I'm feeling, and then continue on. And like I said, to open this up, numbers matter to me. Numbers are huge to me. Like, I counted my sobriety days up until like 1,300 days, something crazy like that. I just like to watch those numbers go up. It matters to me. Like it makes me feel like I've accomplished something. And numbers don't lie. You know what I mean? Like when you see those numbers accumulating, it's not just that you're you're going a longer time in recovery. It's that every single day that you don't drink, you are learning something about yourself, and you're not using alcohol to numb it. And that's huge because, yeah, as beneficial as we feel alcohol is while we're drinking it, and believe me, I do still know that alcohol helps in the meantime, in the interim, at the beginning of a binge session, say, like the first couple drinks, maybe even the first couple hours. But somewhere along the line, and if we've crossed over into addiction, and some people on This Naked Mind use the analogy of once the cucumber becomes the pickle can't go back to being the cucumber. Once you are, in addiction, you're addicted to alcohol and you use it to cope, and you know that, that's when things can change for you because you can recognize that, you know what, there is no going back. There's something to the theory of AA. As much as I didn't agree with like AA or like AA that much, it didn't really work for me. There are certain aspects of it that I did uh, find solace in, and one of them was we can't drink just one drink because that's what makes us fall back into addiction. One drink. And the founder of AA, Bill W., was somebody who, figured that out. Like people would go like 3, 4, 5 months without drinking. They'd have a drink and then they didn't realize why they were back to drinking again. And it was because that one drink brought them back into addiction. Now they went from a slip to a full blown relapse and now they were back to square one. And what I learned from a lot of people on This Naked Mind, the community, was that a lot of people would go back and they'd try drinking. They'd come back a week or 2 weeks or a month later and they'd be like, didn't go well. I'm back. And it was hearing those stories though, and those people being vulnerable about their idea of going back to drinking, feeling like they might want to try to moderate again. It was those stories that helped me in my recovery know that if I went back to trying to moderate, I'd be right back where I was before. And I don't want to fall back into that habit, that pattern again, because I lived it for 27 years. Um, Welcome DMI. 335 days is amazing. Congratulations to you. That is awesome. Uh, Almost a year. And man, the 1 year mark was awesome. It was actually, it was kind of scary, but at the same time, uh, I was able to kind of celebrate it. I was able to celebrate with my family. I got a couple of cards, from one from my wife and one from my oldest daughter, congratulating congratulating me on my 1 year. I had a My wife got us a bottle of NA sangria. It was disgusting. uh, but it wasn't to the point where I couldn't drink it, but it felt like it tasted like flat cola syrup. It just wasn't real appetizing. But she got it for us, and I we had a couple sips of it, celebrated, um, and then I kind of was a little nervous about the 1 year. Like, how am I gonna, am I gonna crave alcohol again? Am I gonna want to drink again? And it turned out I got to a point where it was like, you know what? I want to go to year 2 now. I feel way better than I ever did as a drinker. So I hope that's where you're at with your drinking. Um, I was almost dead. I lost my vision. My liver is gone forever. Uh, I will never drink another drink as long as I live. Glory to God. I've healed a lot. Well, praise God, because that is awesome. And I'm glad that you're here and you're sharing that testimony. That's huge, and that helps a lot of us here, a lot of people here, being able to share our recovery numbers, our where we're at with our where we were with our drinking, and now where we're at being alcohol free. It's huge, and it helps tremendously, not just for other people but for ourselves to talk about that. That's part of the reason why I started this channel. Was I felt a calling, like it was God, and it was I was, I was ready to talk about it. I was ready to talk about my sobriety. I didn't know that I was really ready. It just kind of started to come out. I introduced myself to my pastor, and it took me like a year to build up the courage to go up to him. This is a congregation of, like, at the time it was about 700. They're up to about over 1,000 now. Um, a lot of people, and I know the pastor's busy, and to, I kind of put him on a pedestal, if I'm honest. Um, but he would always stand out after the services and meet with people, and I would walk by him and I would think, man, I want to meet him, you know. And after I went back and forth about this for like 4 or 5 months, finally I walked up to him and I introduced myself and I told him about my sobriety, how it's been 3 going on 4 years. No, I think, no, at the time it was 2.5 going on 3 years, and it just came out. And then I told him that the I appreciated the way that he did his sermons, and it like jived with me, and how his messages just helped me in my recovery, and the faith part of it being like a supplement to my recovery, and then ultimately the faith part of it being the main thing, my sobriety and my faith going hand in hand. Huge, huge. So thank you, DMI. Appreciate the words of encouragement. Welcome in Pakistani Senior. uh, Cinnamary. And that's awesome that you're here. I appreciate you being here. We're talking about anything you want to talk about. This is getting sober and staying sober. That's why I named it this. We want to get sober, but we want to stay sober. And it's, I wouldn't say it's easy to get sober, but it's sometimes for some of us it's easier to get sober than to stay sober. Like if we can get a little bit of time under our belt, we start to forget just how bad alcohol was making us feel, and we might fall back into that temptation, into glorifying alcohol, into romanticizing alcohol. And that's where we can get in trouble. And that's where that second part of this title comes in, stay sober. Because it's, we can't recognize the full scale of the benefits of being alcohol free until we stay alcohol free. And the longer we go in it, the more we start to recognize that life doesn't revolve around alcohol after all. It just doesn't. That anxiety and that panic, it starts to subside. Those negative feelings, they start to dissipate because we can put them in their place better. Drinking keeps us in those ruminations. Drinking keeps us in those negative ruminations, thinking about the worst about things, thinking the worst about ourselves. Addiction does that. It's insidious like that. And then we wallow in that and we think that it's normal. We almost think that that's just the way that it's going to be forever, and that's just the way that it is. And I wanted to try something new. That's what I did. And once I did that, it was like, you know what? This is better. I feel better. I look better. Um, I have more ambition. I have more friends. I have more faith. I have more I have better relationships with my family members. I have a better relationship with myself, all those things, they come in time, and can't see it when we're in addiction. I couldn't see it when I was in addiction. And but once I got alcohol free, I got over that hurdle that first week, and I got into like 10 days to 2 weeks, and I was in that sweet spot where I'm like, this is the longest I've been alcohol free. I'm feeling confident. I don't feel like I want to drink. I mean, I had alcohol in my fridge for 4 months, and I never used it. There were times and days where I was tempted, felt like maybe I wanted to dump it out. Um, Actually, I thought I wanted to throw the cans on a at a brick wall. I wanted to take that case of beer maybe to a park or something, or just to a brick wall and chuck it one after another and watch it explode. Because I was pissed at alcohol. I was like, and I haven't thought about this in a while, but I was pissed about it. I was pissed at alcohol. Like, alcohol is just it's an inanimate object. It's not something that, it means anything, but we think it does. We glorify it. We make it seem like it's so important to celebrate with, to mourn with. And so I was at a point where I was just like, forget alcohol, man. I'm going to go throw these cans of beer and watch them explode. I ultimately didn't do that. I decided, you know what, at some point, I'll probably just dump it out. But that's not today. And I don't know why I hung on to it for so long, but it was in there. And then it was like 4 months later, it was my birthday. And I think I dumped them all out on my birthday. It was like a birthday present to myself. It's like I've made it for 4 months. April 27th, 2020, I quit. So I went May, June, July, August, 4 months. And it was like a gift to myself. I dumped them out in my sink, one after another, threw them in the garbage or in the recycling, and then I felt better about it. I wasn't angry anymore at alcohol. I wasn't angry about much of anything anymore at this point. I still had struggles and bouts of um, irritability, but I wasn't like lashing out anymore. And I give all the credit to being alcohol free. Um, Welcome in, Van, and God bless you. SU, God bless you, brother, from London, England. Well, welcome in from London. Awesome to have you here. Um, AA saved my life. I'm never going back to that old life. Well, that sounds good. And I'm glad that you feel that way. That's how I feel about being alcohol free. Um, for me, and when I quit drinking, I never said I was never going back to it. I got to a point where, um, and I still don't say that I'm never going back to drinking, but at this stage of the game, going on 6 years alcohol free, I'm not a non-drinker, and I wouldn't consider myself wanting to ever drink again. But I don't know what life holds. I don't know, if I ever get to a point where I need an easy way out, if I'm gonna, drink. But I don't plan on it. But what I do every day is I shield up. I pray every day. I stay aware of my purpose. I stay aware of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing every day. I have intentionality. My intention would never be, I wouldn't say would never, but my intention would not be to use alcohol because I know it doesn't work. And I tried that for so long, for 27 years, and there was never enough. There was never an amount that was going to satisfy my cravings. And my craving typically was to, disappear, was to drink to oblivion, to just wash away life. And that was a sad way of going. That was a sad way of life. So I'm glad AA worked for you, Pella, because I say whatever works, whatever keeps you alcohol free, as long as you have a group. It could be online. For me, it was online because I could get on there 24/7 and I could post any time of the day, and then I'd get almost immediate feedback, at least a few comments in the first 10-15 minutes. And then as time went on, I would get maybe like a half a dozen to a dozen comments. And then for a day, maybe 20-30 comments, just depending on, what it was. But though it was that camaraderie and that support and that group that helped me get through daily, um, as well as my wife. She's not an addict, or wasn't like has never been a problem drinker. So from that aspect, she didn't completely understand what I was going through. But that's why have that group of people that get it helps, because we need that. We need to know that there's people struggling. There's people that are living alcohol free, that are just trying to live alcohol free, and that's what we're doing. Talking back and forth, talking about our day, talking about our struggles, what we're going through. Um, I don't talk about current events that much as far as what's going on in my life. But I mean, I'm open to that if you guys ever want to know what's going on with me. But I've been off work for like the last 2 weeks. I'm going back today. It's been awesome to have this time off. I wouldn't have always felt that way, especially as a drinker, but because I would be drinking a lot during that time. But now it's like I just enjoy each day. Each day is different. I've got things going on every day that I can work on, that bring me joy, and it's not alcohol. And so that's what I like to do. But yeah, definitely making content here is huge. uh, Pella says, I know I'm not supposed to say I'm never going back to it, but I'm never going back to that old life of drinking and drugging. Yeah, I get it. I know what you're saying. But yeah, it's important just to keep in mind that never is I had a class in high school, and I never forgot. My teacher would always say, "There's no such thing as always and never." And I never forgot that, you know, because a lot of times we can make something all or nothing if we go that direction. And I think we can get into trouble if we think that way. Like, you know, that's never, I'm never going to be that, or that's never going to be me, or things are always going to be this way. It's just the way that it is. And, you know, so those kind of words I try not to, because as a drinker, I was an all or nothing drinker. I was an all or nothing thinker. Uh, you know, and my mind would go from A to Z on a situation, and it would always go to the negative. It would go to the negative place. And in recovery, and the longer I've gone into being alcohol free and drug free, for that matter, just no chemicals at all. Um, it, my all or nothing thinking has basically gone away. Like, I'm able to just roll with the way things are in life, good or bad. I don't get too high or too low. I just roll with whatever happens. Um, I wouldn't say I've had anything that's been like earth shattering happen in the last 5 to 6 years being alcohol free. Certainly, there have been some things that have been hard as hell to deal with. I'd say probably a half dozen things, maybe one a year, you know, or whatever. But going into those situations alcohol free, and then coming out of them, dealing with them without even thinking about drinking, is hugely rewarding. And I would say those first couple years, it was way more rewarding, because it was like I would get through it, and then I would think back and I would think, you know, I never even considered alcohol as a solution. So that made me feel like I was solidified in this life. And now it's nothing. You know, I don't think anything of alcohol. Alcohol is really nothing to me. But man, when we're in addiction, or even the first year or two out of addiction, there we think that alcohol or drugs are all of it, you know. And then, but as we grow in our sobriety, in our alcohol free life, drug free life, whatever you want to refer to it as we get further and further away from that, we start to recognize that, man, there's so much more out there. And we can get out of our heads a lot easier. You know, for me, like, I like to hike, so I take these hiking. I don't go for like 10 miles or anything, but I'll go for like a couple miles. I typically try to walk like 3 miles a day. So I might get out for an outdoor hike maybe a couple times a week, for a couple mile hike. But if I'm not doing that, I'll try to walk around the neighborhood a couple times, or I'll try to go to a store or a mall and walk around there. I incorporated exercise into my morning routine, stretching, praying. I read scripture, and those are the 4 or 5 things that I do every day, typically in the morning, to set the tone for the day, um, and then go about my day. Um, so let's get to some of these comments. Young Junk, welcome in. Uh, Pat, welcome. No one among us has maintained anything like perfect adherence to AA principles. Well, it sounds like you're an advocate for AA, and that's perfectly awesome. I say whatever works for you. The 12 steps, there is definitely proven, it's been proven to work for a lot of people. I would say that some of those principles are hugely beneficial. Um, I'm not sure that you need to go to every person that you've ever wronged and say you're sorry. I mean, maybe I don't know the exact you know uh, way of going about that, but a lot of times for me, and I didn't, and the therapists that I had, they would even say the same thing, like, you want to deal with the moment now, but if we want to go back into the past, that would be fine. But like, a lot of people, a lot of therapists, professionals, they want to talk about the here and now. And actually, it was almost like pulling teeth to get them to talk like go into my past. But then after a certain amount of time, it was like, I don't even want to go back there. I'm trying my best to forget about that, because that was holding me back. But I get what that philosophy is you want to close that chapter. But closure to me was just coming to terms with the way I felt about things in my life personally. I didn't feel like I mean, I did have people that I wronged. They were in my life, and that was a catalyst to get me alcohol free. And needless to say, I apologized to those folks right away, um, and then moved on. But yeah, AA, yeah, I'm perfectly good with their philosophy if that works for you. Brian, welcome in. Uh, yeah, it's good to be encouraging, and I'm wishing you well as well. And yeah, so yeah, exercise is huge. Eating healthy is huge. Two things I'm not great at. um, but I mean, it is what it is. I'm 48 years old. We have to have priorities. Um, I've added so many different layers since I quit drinking. Like I said, faith was in year 3. Enlightenment was like number 1. Just being enlightened about what life is all about, like rekindling that spark of joy that I had as a young man. I guess maybe I just started drinking when I was 15. So I wouldn't say that I was ever like perfectly happy before I started drinking. I don't think I would have started drinking if I was. But there was a lot of optimism in my teenage years, even though I was struggling with alcohol and weed. I still felt optimistic that things were going to work out for me. And then when they didn't, I was crushed. And that's when I think I slipped down. And so, but getting back to it, it's building up changing those neural pathways, and starting to build up from the beginning again. Like the first year, like I said, enlightenment. I want um, to learn again about being like optimistic about my life, being optimistic about life in general, not being so skeptical of people, having more trust of people. I never was someone who could trust anybody really, and that addiction does that to us. Um, so enlightenment was like the first year, and then year 2, uh, balance. It's learning how to be more balanced. Like when we're drinking all the time and we're in addiction, we're up and down. So, and we think that that's normal. We're real high or we're real low. Life is like a roller coaster. We're just trying to ride it out to get to that binge drink. We get there and it's like a euphoric feeling, and that's what we're kind of like living for. But then we have a hangover, so we're low, and then we feel better, so we're starting to think about alcohol again, so we're high. Then we get to the drink, we're high, and then we're back to low, and it's up and down. So year 2 for me was just balance, finding that balance, learning to accept that, hey, I'm not going to have alcohol in my life. Life isn't up and down anymore. It's more even keeled, and it feels better to live that way. I always craved stability. I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have the structure that I wished I would have had growing up. And so I had to start to build that structure myself. I never built that structure all my life. So now I'm 42, 43 years old, and it's almost like I'm starting over again from being when I started drinking at 15. And starting to form better boundaries with people, starting to form better boundaries for myself, and just getting to that point where it was like, balance is huge, and it feels good to be there. So but yeah, then year 3 and 4, faith. Year five, Year four, I read the Bible. Year five, I started reading more books. And man, this year I'm gonna cook more, homemade meals, bake more stuff, and stay more organized. Those are my resolutions for this year. So, but wherever you guys are with your journey, I'm glad that you're here. Please consider becoming a member. Please consider subscribing. Please consider joining my Facebook group, Sobriety in the Storm. The link is pinned in all my videos. But yeah, check out my video about binge drinking today. I'll have a video coming out on Sunday about panic attacks, anxiety attacks, that kind of thing, and how alcohol plays a role in that. So, hope you guys have a great sober day, and we'll see you on the next one.